Are you struggling with your writing right now? Go ahead, raise your hand. You are not alone. In today's episode of The Written Compass, I'm going to talk about the most common reasons that I see people struggling, why that is. And I want to bring normalcy to the topic, and I want to support you in shifting yourself out of the struggle. I am so excited you're here. Let's get started. Hello. Welcome to another episode of The Written Compass. Today, I'm going to talk about the struggles. The struggles are real as a writer. And I particularly want to talk about some of the things that I see over and over again are why you might be struggling to write your book. Some of these come from what I call myths about writing, some stories or misunderstandings that we have about writing. And I want to share them today because they really, like I said, the struggles are real. I was talking to my team about this idea, and we were talking about what are we experiencing in our own writing currently, and what do we see our clients. And one of our team members at Synergy Publishing, Taylor, shared how she will often get in a rhythm or a pattern where she goes something like this. See if you can relate. She's like, okay, after I clean the kitchen, then I'll write. Or I'm going to go get groceries and then I'll write. Raise your virtual hand from afar. I won't see it, but I'll know that if you've ever had this kind of mentality before. And this is what I call that if-then thinking, right? And where does it lead us? It usually leads us to little to no writing because everything else is taking a priority. Our beautiful brain is saying, well, I can't do that thing because I've got these other things to do. Now, this doesn't mean that when you're working on your book and drafting that everything in life has to stop in order to focus on your writing. In fact, what we teach in our embodied writing programs is quite the contrary. You just need to create the rhythm and flexibility and schedule for yourself that's going to let writing actually support you in the rest of your to-dos. Yes, writing can actually support you. It's often like exercise. How do you feel after you do go for that walk? Do you go to the gym? Do that workout? Everything else feels a little easier. And the same goes for writing. So if you find yourself in this if-then thinking, then one, I want you to just recognize and bring awareness. It's totally normal. All these things I'm talking about today are very, very normal. But noticing that it's happening and then start to make a different choice. And one way to do that is to create intention around your writing. And go back to previous episodes where I talk about different ways to chunk your writing and how to create space for your writing. There's plenty of podcast episodes on the Written Compass that will support you in that. The next thing that I see people, why they struggle is they get into this, I have to know it all, or this shoulding mentality, right? Nothing will keep you spinning with your writing more than thinking you, quote, should, know, do, have done, completed XYZ before you can actually really begin writing. Maybe it's, oh, well, once I get, I've got to know my outline. And this actually leads to if-then thinking as well, because you think when I get my outline done, then I can start writing. Or maybe it's like, no, I need to do a little bit more research. I need to talk to these people. I need to see who my audience is going to be. I need to figure that out. I need to know it all before I begin writing. I need to know how it's going to start. I need to know what I'm going to do in the middle. I need to know how it's going to end. I should know these things before I start writing. Just feel that in your body for a moment. It does not feel good. It is a lot of shoulding, and that typically does not lead us anywhere. Instead, I want you to realize you have everything you need. Say it to yourself. I have everything I need to start this writing journey and just get started. There's nothing you need to know or do before you write words down. Now, of course, I want you to have all the support you need. I love supporting people in this process, but ultimately, all you need is yourself and pen and paper or fingers and keys, and you can go. That's it. Because you're going to discover what the writing wants to be as you start writing it. Doesn't mean those other things aren't helpful, but if we let those be gateways and we think we have to know all those things before we start writing, we're going to stay struggling. We're going to stay spinning. Okay? The next thing I see people struggling with is they get a sense of disconnection. And so I want to talk about this with a little bit of a kind of silly analogy. So think about this. Think about when you walk into, if you ever have, into a fancy restaurant, whatever that means for you. What starts to change, if anything, about yourself? So I'll use myself as an example. I've been to a fancy restaurant a time or two, and I might change the way I walk, right? I might walk a little straighter, possibly because I might have on some slightly uncomfortable fancy outfit, right? Maybe some high heels, all that kind of stuff. Maybe I hold my drink a little different. Maybe I hold my fork and knife differently. I might pay attention, right, to the silverware a little in a different way than I would if I were just at home. I might even start to find myself going so far as like kind of becoming someone that I'm not, or at least typically not. And so it's interesting to see how folks actually do this when they begin writing. They often will take on this whole other version of themselves that they think they need to be, back to the shitting example, in order to write, quote, right or correctly. Now, I'm just going to be straight up. This thinking we need to take on or become a something other than who we are in order to write most likely comes from school or some other authoritative entity that has told you, in order to do this, you need to, right, step outside of yourself. And the myth that we need to do anything different when we write, say, than what we do when we speak or communicate with somebody else just in a casual setting, is going to keep you stuck. Now, I don't mean to say that there are different brain things that are happening when we go from speaking to writing. I'm not exactly talking about that. But one thing I really want to encourage everyone to do is stay connected to themselves. When you disconnect from yourself, when you think you need to step over here metaphorically or literally be in some special space in order to, quote, write or get in the correct way of writing, then you're creating distance between you and your words. Your words are you. And when you do that disconnection thing, you often lose the very thing that makes your writing so amazing, which is you. We need to have all of you, the messy, the imperfect, the I don't know what I'm writing parts of you actually laying words down, because that's where the good stuff is. That's the nuggety goodness in the middle. So when I see people struggling with their writing, I often do a check-in of how connected they feel to what they're writing. Or are they taking on some other form of themselves that they think they need to be in order to write their book? Another thing that I see people doing is really getting concerned a little too soon or in unhelpful ways of writing for others. Now, I've spoken about this before on the podcast and definitely on social media. By the way, go follow me on Instagram at @ShaynaHartman_ if we're not already connected. And while thinking about your audience is absolutely helpful until it's not. If you're thinking about, for instance, we were talking about this on our team with Cindy, one of our other amazing writing coaches, PhD turned writing coach. And she was like, I sometimes get stuck because I'm thinking no one's going to read this, right? Who's going to like this? And if you're thinking about that constantly, will someone like this? Is someone going to read this? Then it's going to shift you into pretty much doing anything else besides writing, because it's a little bit of a self-sabotage, right? If I go down that line of thinking and I tell myself, I don't think anyone's going to like this, then why would I write in the first place? And guess what? That gets you off the hook from doing the hard, vulnerable thing of writing. And ultimately, it does come down to being seen and being vulnerable. And it's not really about whether we think someone will like it or not. It's whether we're okay with letting ourselves be seen and witnessed in this way. Yeah? Whew, that got deep. The final thing that I want to share that I see time and time again that keeps writers stuck, keeps them struggling, is that they are constantly trying to write. In my notes, I see in all caps, the final draft of the book, every time they sit down to write. And it's like, all they think about writing is the book and only the book. So help you God, right? And yes, when you commit to writing your book, you do need to write your book, but the mindset that you need to be writing the final draft of the book every time you sit down to write is likely going to keep you struggling, if not completely frozen, if not completely not writing. Yeah, it may help you kind of like push you a little bit forcefully to get some words down, some pages down. You might find some success when I sit down and go, I got to write the book. But you also might find that those little successful moments are few and far between, which ultimately in the long journey of writing a book is not going to help you, is not going to serve you. So shifting into more, what wants to show up today? What am I feeling? Just writing what's showing up on your brain in the moment to just get yourself in the groove of putting words down. I was just reading a draft of someone that I'm supporting and writing some blog articles connected to her other writing and her book and so on and so forth. And in the draft, her shitty first messy draft, she wrote, okay, I set the timer. I'm sitting down to write this thing. I've got a lot on my plate today. I'm not really sure what I'm doing, but here we go. And then guess what? Another line or two later, and she's in the topic, she's in the thread, she's in her voice, she's in her body, she's connected, and she's talking about what she wants to write about. She didn't sit down going, I've got to write the article, the blog from the start. She just sat down to write and let what showed up show up, and then went from there. So which of these little myths, little disconnects, little things that keep you struggling, do you feel like connect with you the most? Which one do you find yourself looping in? I myself find a little bit of struggling with all of them. Probably a little more of the if-then thinking sometimes, writing for others, and constantly trying to write the final draft, because if I'm going to do it, I want to do it right from the start, right? I definitely find myself getting stuck in that area. So as always, I want to know which one resonates with you the most. Maybe it's a little bit of all of them. Maybe it's just a few. Maybe it's just one, and that's your thing that keeps you struggling. And how are you going to shift yourself out of it? Right? I want to hear all of it. So let me know, send me a message, share this podcast episode, and ping me at @ShaynaHartman_ on Instagram. As always, I'm so grateful to connect with you here. I can't wait to see and hear more about what you're writing, what you're working on. So don't hesitate to reach out and share. Talk to you soon. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Written Compass. If you are enjoying this content, do me a favor and go and review the podcast. This allows me to share and get these messages out to the people who really need them, who we want to read their books in the future. You can also go and share your thoughts and tag me at @ShaynaHartman_ on Instagram. Again, this is just a way for us to get connected and share the writing love. And if you know that you are ready to write your book, that message that's been burning inside of you for a long time, then I want to talk to you. My team and I want to talk to you. Head on over to ShaynaHartman.com and click Work with Us. From there, you'll see an application to explore and see if writing your book is your next best step.